Hey, good morning, Richard. This is going to be an extremely long demo video for you for your Goth Master or your Goth Grandmaster chassis inside of your KR Sabers Graflex replica. Normally on my demos, I would sit here and I would show you the saber. I'd open it up and I'd show it to you while I sit in front of camera. But this chassis is very unique. It has a lot of moving parts, and I thought it would be better to do it at my desk. So I'm just recording this intro to explain that to you. I'm going to do the actual demo over here on my desk with the camera facing down on my desk so that we can run through the saber and the chassis. First of all, thank you for letting me do this. This has been one of those unicorn installs for me. I've had two other opportunities in the past to do one. I turned them both down at the time because I felt like I wasn't ready. But this one I felt like I was ready to tackle it. It is something that took me a long time to do. I'm very proud of the way it came out. Handle this with care, though. I'll try to go over that in my video. But yeah, if you have any questions at the end, please let me know. And let's go ahead and get into the demo. Thanks. Hey, good morning, Richard. I thought it was easier to do your demo like this because there is a lot of stuff to go through on this saber. I will try my best to stay in frame. I don't typically do my demos this way, but I didn't want to hold up this guy in midair while I'm trying to show it and also show my face, right? So this has some particular heft to it. This is of course, this is the KR replica Graflex. It's a very beautiful replica done by KR Sabers. I did not put your belt clip on here. I didn't drill any holes. You may want to have some holes drilled for sound. That's not typically something that I do. So you don't have any sound venting. That's something to be aware of on this saber. You'll need to get that done. To whoever you have do it, you could just send the handle out. Of course, you don't need to send out the entire saber for that. All right, so there's that. I do have your grips on here. Your other grips are still in the bag though. I didn't put those on. I used the ones with the adhesive backing, and then of course I did not put your rivets in. Also something I don't particularly feel comfortable doing, so I think you and I had spoke about that anyway. All right, but this is a 2-button setup on the chassis, but a 1-button setup on the saber. Your 1 button being right here. All right, your top button right here, that will basically be your power, so on and off, and that's how you activate it and deactivate it when it's in the saber. All right, to get the chassis out, you want to do a few things. It is a very tight fit into this guy, so first thing we'll want to do is come over here and flip this down. We'll want to come over here and grab our handle very carefully, twist it counterclockwise. All right, counterclockwise until it stops. Now I find it easier, since it is such a tight fit in here and the chassis comes apart in the middle, it's easier to take the entire thing off at once. So once we flip that down, return this counterclockwise to unlock the handle, we'll want to come over here and unscrew your glass eye. All right, and the reason we do that is because the glass eye is what locks the chassis in place inside of the saber. So we'll unscrew the glass eye, and then again we'll come over here and we're going to want to unscrew your button. All right, we want to do that because I had to build up this button on the inside just a little bit so that it would hit that small tactile switch, and we don't want that rubbing back and forth between the tactile switch and causing that friction. So we'll go ahead and we'll take this off. Now the chassis is free from the saber, and we can come over here and we can pull down on the handle and take the entire chassis system out with it. All right, very carefully pull it out like that. We'll put this off to the side. Now it is a tight fit into the handle, so what I like to do is I like to grab it right about right here, right above the lip of the actual handle itself, not up here because this is the connection point for the pins. All right, so grab it right here and then just kind of twist it back and forth gently and take the handle off like that. Super tight fit, but it does fit. All right, and then I'll show you how to put it back in. But this is your Grandmaster chassis. This is a beautiful piece by Goth 3 Designs. It was a very, it was my pleasure to be able to do it for you. I'm not sure if I said this in my intro or not, because I'm filming this before I do the intro, that this has always been kind of a unicorn install for me. This is something I've always wanted to tackle. I've had 2 other chances to do this in the past, but I turned them both down because I just knew I wasn't quite ready to do it, and I didn't want to take that on. So when you had come to me with an opportunity to do this, I felt like I was kind of at a stage in my career where I could attempt to do this and not mess anything up, and then it would be a fun deal. It's a very complicated install, probably the most complicated I've ever done. And as a matter of fact, it is the most complicated I've ever done. And there's lots of moving parts. Okay, so we can start from the top and then just try to work our way down. All right, so you've got a stock V2 NPXL that came with the kit that's in there. So it's a long pin system, but it has the lens cover and everything is good to go in there. Your blade retention, or your retention screw to hold that in there is right here actually. There is a set screw in there that's holding it, but in all honesty, the press fit that it took to get that in there, that thing's not coming out. Okay, then of course at your glass eye area, that helps you lock this inside of the saber. Over here you have your power tactile switch. All right, this is one of 2 different power tactile switches that you have on this saber. We've got that right there. Now to take this saber apart, these fit together pretty tight. All right, so what I would suggest is you need to grab it in 2 different places. You would grab it, you can see these 2 greeblies right here. They've got the circles around them where the SLA ribs go. I would grab it on either part and then just gently kind of like bring it apart, wiggle it side to side, bring it apart like that. The reason I say to hold it like that is because this piece right here wanted to come loose on me if I wasn't very careful. So, I did my best to adhese that down, but you don't want to put undue pressure on just like pulling it all the time. So if you grab it at that point right here, as you're pulling it apart, then, you will alleviate that. So we'll put that off to the side and we'll talk about this. Of course, you've got your rotating plasma gate right here, and everything has been lightly weathered. I hope that that you like the way that came out, but everything has been lightly weathered. You can see here the 6 pins that I used right along here. So all of these, these 4 pins, 2 of them are for the switches, one's for data, one is for what's the other one for? 2 switches, a data, and I forget off the top of my head. It's early in the morning, but that it's for something. It's for something, definitely. And then a plus and a positive and a negative are the 2 bigger ones. That's what I did there. Okay, hopefully I'm staying in focus there. But anyway, you've got those. You got magnets here. There are lots of magnets on this guy, so these are 2 of them. There are lots of stuff like this. So like these bent rods to do, these bent rods to put in, rods here and everything, tubes and everything. So yeah, you'll notice that these are different lengths. They're different lengths on purpose. They needed to be that way. So I followed the step-by-step tutorial from Goth's video. And that's what I did there. All right, so if these ever get loose on you, these nuts here, you can just tighten them up. You can either tighten them up with your fingers, but you can go in with a pair of like needle nose pliers and you can, tighten those up. These 3 nuts right here hold this assembly in place. You'll notice that I did hit this one a little bit with a Dremel just because it was having a little bit of a time sliding into one of these sleeves right here. All right, so to alleviate that, I did hit this one with just a little bit with a Dremel to knock down the diameter just a bit. But that's basically, what you've got right there. So we'll put that off to the side and work our way down. Here you can see I've got the pins. I've got the male pins right here that line up, with the holes right here. A lot of people I see in their videos have these pins sticking way out. I did not like that. I felt like that it was asking for damage that way. So I just stuck them out just enough to where they still make contact, you know, but they're pretty sturdy within their holders. And, you know, I just felt it was cleaner that way. So that was something that I chose to do there. Okay. Coming down here, this actually comes off if you want it to. It's held on with magnets. If you open up this door, you'll see my wiring for the pins. One thing I had to do with my wiring for the pins is you'll see some shrink tube in there because I was very exhausted when I mapped out what wire went to what pin. So when I went to wire this up finally, what I had noticed was all my wiring was wrong. And I had to do a lot of troubleshooting, figuring out what actual pin went to what wire. It took me a long time to do that. But because I had to do that, I had to cut some of those wires and you know, join them to different wires than what I thought they originally were. So one word of advice to anyone doing this is when you map out these pins here to which ones correspond with the upper half, take your time. You know, do it when you're fresh. Don't do it after you're exhausted. I think I'd worked on this thing for about 11 hours that day, and then I had mapped those out and totally goofed it. So, but anyway, that's how you'd get to the wiring, although I don't know that you would ever want to, but it is a possibility. All right, and then when you're not using it or wanting in there, of course, you see these 3 magnets here and 3 magnets here correspond with the 6 magnets on this panel, and the panel just lines up and it locks in place. You have a removable battery a removable crystal right here. So we're going to take this crystal out real quick and talk about it because there's actually 2 of them. We've got one here and we've got one here, and they're wired differently. All right, so in the excuse me, instructional video, first of all, the instructional video was made for a CFX build. I modified this to accept a Proffie, and then I also used a Proffie V3 because it has some additional data pads, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity to utilize the V3 board for its additional data pad capacity. All right, so you can see these 6 pins here. In the instructional video, these 2 top pins aren't used. All right, so what I did on the alternate crystal, which is over there, is instead of the data pad being, you know, a data pin being right here, I made the alternate crystal have the data pad up here in one of the unused pins. That way we can program it for a different color. So currently I have one of these crystals will be blue, and then I have the other crystal being red. I have an example font on here right now. I just have one font, I think, because there's 3 blade styles. I have one font, but I made it like there's a blue version, there's a blue blade version and a red blade version, so that when you swapped the crystals, you could swap the font, you know, and it would match the crystal. But that's what I did there. I did use blade detect, so the saber will recognize when you pop one of these out and then when you put one in. All right, so that's what I did there as well. And then when you flip it over, you could see these 4 magnets right here. Okay, so there's 4 magnets in here. There's 6 pins. There's a neopixel accent on each side of this crystal. So one facing this way, one facing the bottom. It does matter how you put this in the saber though. You'll notice one side of the crystal is bigger than the other side, right? This is the top. So when you put it in here, and you slide it down in here like this, you got to put it in this orientation. If you look closely in here, kind of where if I can get my tweezers in there, you can see those 6 pads. You can just barely see them in there. Those 6 pads will line up to the 6 pins on the crystal. And of course, over here on this piece right here, you have the magnets that correspond with the back of the crystal as well. All right, so when we're putting it in, we just make sure, you know, we put it in top side, make sure the pins are on the same side as the pads. You can just drop it in there, basically drops in like that, and then just push it in there until it lines up with the magnets just like that. And we'll go over that functionality here in a second. All right. Moving down, you can see you've got two tactile switches right here. Okay. They're not glued in, so you have a little bit of play on this activation switch before it actually engages. I did not want to glue it in because there was plenty of room for it to rest on the actual chassis underneath the board. So I try to do that whenever I can. That way, you know, in case there's ever some troubleshooting needs in the future, you know, there's no glue being, you know, wrestled with. But that is your power. That's your second power switch. So that acts the same way as the top one, you know, in the Saber. And then down here, right here, this is your auxiliary switch right here. So power and auxiliary. Okay. Moving down, this panel comes off. We take this panel off. You got all these magnets right here. They line up with the magnets that are right here. When you take this panel off, it allows you access to your kill switch right here, which we'll flip here in a second. All right. You've also got an OLED screen right here. All right. This takes a little bit different of an OLED screen than the one that you sent, but it's no big deal. I had a few of these around, and I'm glad I had two of them around because the first one I put in, I actually damaged installing the rest of the Saber, and it went out on me. So I had to dig that out and put a new one in, and this one's working fine. All right. So you've got this guy that comes off. If you flip it around, you've got this panel that comes off. All right. And you can see like all the magnets here then too, right? Like you got 5 magnets over here. You got another 5 magnets over here. All of these panels had to individually be glued on. This panel was an individual piece, you know, and on this other cover, these acrylic pieces, they're not quite acrylic, I'm not sure what they are, but these clear pieces had to be glued on, you know, so there's all that. But when you take this piece off right here, that exposes your battery chamber. All right, so we'll pull this battery out. When you pull the battery out, you want to pull it straight out. You don't really kind of want to pop one side or the other. It's not going to come out right. You want to try to pull it straight out. This is your battery cover. It did kind of open up down here to the wiring, so I put a piece of electrical tape over the wiring before I put it together to, you know, just try to take that visibility out a little bit. It was the same thing that I saw Goth do on his video, so that's kind of what I tried to do there. Negative side of your battery will always go up here by your crystal chamber. You have that leaf spring right there, and of course your positive is over here by your speaker pod. All right, and then of course you've got your other five magnets here and 5 magnets here. There's a magnet here and a magnet here. Those all correspond, you know, with the appropriate slots there, so we're good to go there. All right. Moving down to your speaker pod, you can see your speaker pod is on a J-lock system. So if you look closely here, you know, you could see that how it's locked in right there on this nub. So we want to turn that. You see how it turns? So we turn it and then we pull it off. And it's on, of course, it's got its own 3 magnets. And you can see on your speaker pod, we've got 4 pogo pins. So 2 of them are for the speaker and the other 2 are for the LED. I have a blue LED that's going to shine through that acrylic piece that's down in here. And this reacts to sound. So there's no programming needed when doing anything to this Saber. This LED will always react to sound. All right, I wanted to eliminate one less blade style for you if I could, and that's how I did that right there. So that is blue, and we'll see that here in a second. Of course, this is a 28mm KR speaker, so it sounds really good too. All right, looking over to here, you can see you've got your 3 magnets here that correspond with your speaker pod. You've got another 4 pads over here that correspond to the 4 pogo pins that are in the speaker pod. So those all line up nice. And you've got board access. So you've got access to your SD card and your micro USB right here. This is a Proffie V3. This was a bit of a challenge because this was my first V3 install. So the pad layout is a little bit different than on a V2. And I also had to wire it upside down because this was originally made for a CFX. So you could see the cutout here was on the bottom was for the SD card and on the top was for the USB. So normally you would wire a Proffie completely, you know, the opposite way. So I had to pay attention, special attention to the wiring diagram, you know, because I was wiring this upside down. But now you have good access to everything here. I was able to program the board from here. I don't typically program the board until, you know, I have it locked in place to make sure that there's plenty of access, and there is right there. So you just take your SD card out with some tweezers, put it back in with some tweezers, a straight micro USB connection right there, and you're good to go. All right. There is a copy of the config file that I used on your SD card, but I think I'll email you one because I think I did make a few changes just to the naming configuration of the sound font on here, and I can email that to you in case you want to build from that. All right, but that's what that looks like in there. So of course, when we put this back in, we'll want to make sure that we have these, it's very important, we have those 4 pogo pins lined up to those 4 pads right there, and we'll just put that on and it locks itself down. So it turns itself into that J-lock system and you're good to go there. All right. So moving back, we can take our battery, try to put it straight in and lock it down. Then now that's good to go. You can put your battery cover on and it goes in just like that, right? Come over here and we can flip our kill switch.
With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?
Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
Let's turn this off and talk about something I forgot to talk about real quick. In this area right here, you had like 3 spots on each side of the Proffie, or each side of the OLED screen. So a total of 6 spots that were meant for these little LEDs right here, right? These little LEDs that you could throw in there and you could use. I chose not to use these because these were single color LEDs. And what I chose to do instead was I put a 4 neopixel strip underneath this area right here. And then I put another 4 pixel strip underneath this area right here. So you have neopixel animations going here and you could program them to do whatever you want. Although there is a total of 8 neopixel strip or like 8 neopixel accents, they're wired together. So when you program the board, you would program that as a 4 accent strip. All right, and they will mirror each other. And that's what's going on right there. So let's turn that on again.
With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?
Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
Now you could see that your blue LED, how it was reacting to sound. And of course your OLED screen was working. And then you could see your crystal here, red. So we'll go ahead and we'll put this cover back on. All right. Have a little bit of patience with this cover. It does go on. It's just a tight fit, but it does go on and do its job like it's supposed to do. All right, now we can go ahead and we could turn this on if we wanted to from right here. And of course, you could see your OLED screen, and then you could see your animations here. You'll see it a little better in the dark. I got the sun coming right through my window, but you can see what's going on there. You can see your blue LED over here in your speaker pod. All right. We'll turn this off for now. And let me show you how the crystals work before we put this on. All right, so we'll turn it on. I use blade detect for the crystal. So this is the red one, right? So we'll come over here. We'll pop this crystal out with either our fingers. You can use your fingers. I like using a pair of tweezers. But you can see how it recognizes that the crystal has been taken out. You still have an LED down there that's shining, although I kept that silver so that it could just actuate it could accent the actual crystal you had in there, and it didn't take away from the crystal color. But that's what's going on in there. We'll make sure that we orientate the other crystal the right way, right? Drop it down in there. Push it down until the magnets meet.
With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?
Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
This is the blue crystal. So this one is blue. You can see the blade detect recognized when we took the crystal out, and it also recognized when we popped one back in. All right. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn this off.
I see your point, sir. I suggest a new strategy, Artu. Let the Wookiee win.
That is a force effect. If you do a long press on the power when the saber's on, you get that effect. If you want to just turn the saber off, it's a quick press on the power, or you could do twist off. I gave you that as well. All right, so now when you're putting on the top piece, make sure you have your this piece right here on the same side as your pins, and you want to take your time here. All right, take your time here, especially when you get to the part where the pins just start to meet. All right. Don't just assume you could slam this guy on and everything's going to be fine. Just go ahead and give it a quick check. Make sure everything gets locked down good. Make sure the pins are aligning like they're supposed to. Now when we turn this on, we'll get, we'll get accents in our main blade connector. We'll get a spinning plasma gate. Let's turn it on real quick. Well, let's use this power button up here. Since you already saw how this one worked, let's use this one up here. Now you've got, it's lighting up here for your blade connector, right? You've got your rotating plasma gate. And then you could turn it off from here as well. You could twist it off, or you could just tap this. And then in a second, your plasma gate will stop spinning, just like that, right? And then all of your LEDs are on a timer. So if you don't turn the saber on right away, it will time out. These LEDs here that you could see over here in your lens as well. All right, so now when we want to put this into the saber, again, we want to carefully do this. So we want to make sure that we've got our red button off, we've got our glass eye off. Take this and carefully line up this piece right here with where your red button goes. So we just kind of slide that into the saber. Of course, you'll see it pop out. And you want to be very careful pushing that in, because that is one of the very tight spots. Yeah, so just be very careful. But once you get that pushed all the way in, of course, you'll see that line up right here. But before we lock that red button in, we're going to come over here and lock this chassis in. And we lock the chassis in with the actual glass eye. All right, so we're going to take the glass eye and just gently screw it in. Once you screw that in, it locks the chassis in place. Not that it needs much help, because it is a super tight fit, but it does lock the chassis in place. All right, we can take now our red button. Something I didn't show you before, but I did have to build up this red button a little bit, because it's concave on the inside, and it really needed like a nipple right in the middle to be able to press that tactile switch. So that's what I did to the red button there. And you can just take this and screw it right in. Again, be careful with this, because on these Graflex replicas, it's very easy to cross thread these if you're not careful. There's not a whole lot of thread on this shell right here. But if we did everything right, we could come over here from here and turn it on. All right. You've got your LED there. This time we can do a little twist off. You can hear your motor, but it will stop right there. It stopped. You can actually see some shine through your bubble strip. All right, your bubble strip is the one that you gave me. It's just a press fit in there. And of course, we've got your LEDs over here again. That will go off with the timer. And then we can take your handle and slide it on. This is one of the more tight fits as well. So we'll kind of want to just like take our time with this guy. Try to line up your J-lock system with your notches right here before you put the handle on, so you could just go straight into it. So we'll go straight into it. You get to about right here, take your time, line it up nice. Make sure both sides are good. You get it past this clamp, it gets a little bit easier. You can just push it straight in, lock it. I wouldn't even, you don't have to turn all the way. You can if you want to, but at this point, I would just clamp this down and everything is nice and locked in place, and we could turn this on. We'll let that motor stop for a second. Now the motor is its own blade style. You can mess around with the different types of with the different types of blade style coatings that I gave you, you can make it go faster, you can make it go slower. If you make it go slower, you will get a little bit less of that motor sound. Faster, of course, looks cool, and it can stand to go faster, but of course, the louder it will be, the faster it goes. All right. To play your soundtrack on each of your fonts, you just want to go ahead and do a long press on the power when the saber's off. And then do another long press on the saber, or on the button when the saber is off, to turn it off as well. I forgot to put this on here while I was showing you that, but to break it down again, we'll break it down one more time. Okay, first we'll want to come over here. We'll take our glass eye off. All right, we'll take our red button off. You don't have to unscrew it all the way, but I find it's best just go ahead and take it off. All right, it's the safest route to go. Come over here and flip this down. Turn this counterclockwise so we know that our J-lock system is matching our tab. And then we can start to push this out. Just like that, all right. As you can see, I am taking my time with this a lot. Because I spent so much time building it, right? It's pretty robust. And again, we'll grab it here and we'll kind of twist the handle off from the base, all right? Not from up here, but from the base. We can just kind of work the handle back and forth and take it off. And then I forgot to put this on. Of course, this goes right here. Now, I am taking my time with this guy and being very gentle with it, just because I spent, the last 3.5 days working on it. And I don't want to break it. It's not a super fragile thing, but it's elaborate. It's expensive. It does need to be handled with a certain amount of care. So if you do all those things, you shouldn't have any problem. We'll come back over here. We'll break this back down. Take this off. We'll go ahead and take the battery cover off. Take the speaker off. We'll leave the speaker on because I wanted to show you. We'll come back over here. Remember, grabbing it by these two greeblies right here, and then just gently kind of working it back and forth until it comes out. We'll go ahead and turn it on, and then we'll switch crystals one more time. We'll go over to the red one.
With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?
Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
So if I were you, when I did your, or like when you sit down to do your sound fonts, I would take some of the pre-offs off of the fonts, like this one, because when we turn it on, we go to take this crystal out. Your blade detect recognizes that the crystal's been taken out, so we'll go ahead and slide that out. We put the other one in. This is the red one, right? Make sure that's lined up properly. Drop that in.
With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?
Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
That's the one thing, that it will replay that boot font. So I would just take that off and maybe modify that if you want. You could turn this off. I put the same font on here twice, so just one to match the red crystal. We'll go ahead and hit auxiliary to go another font.
I suggest you try it again.
Dark side.
This time, let go your conscious self and act on instinct.
So now when we turn this on, I gave you some red animation right here in your LEDs, right, to match the blade. And of course your blade, if we were to put this on, I don't like putting this on when the saber is on. I mean, it is something you can do. It makes me uncomfortable, so I do not do that. When this is on, we come back over here and turn it on again. You got a red blade here too, right? Just like that. That will stop, and then we can come over here and we can flip our kill switch just like that. All right. We'll go ahead and take the battery out. Well, I'll just leave the battery in. I'm going to include a battery with this install, so I'll just leave this one in. But that, in a nutshell, is your Grandmaster chassis. I hope that you like the way it came out. We'll go ahead and we'll put all these pieces back on. Everything is back on now. I'll go ahead and I'll put this back into the saber. Yeah, so I hope you like how that came out. Let me know if you have any questions, and if not, I will package this guy up and do my best to get it out in the mail to you today, depending on how fast I can get this demo all edited and out to you. All right, thanks, man.